Hey friends, it's Missy again. Thanks so much for stopping in today. I'm back with another layout and video for Cut to You. I'm helping celebrate the second anniversary of the store, and I'm going to be using this cut file called Love Our Crazy Life. And I love cut files like this because it instantly gives you a place to put your picture right there in that open spot. And it kind of designs the layout for you right off the bat. So I have this picture here. I printed it pretty large because I wanted one big picture to kind of tuck right there to the right in that big open spot. And that's where I'm going to start this page. And I was feeling rainbow vibes, surprise, surprise. And so I just went through some things that were in a stack on my desk that I should have put away, but you know how that goes. And I've got, let's see, some Pocket Life cards that I don't even know why I have these because I don't do Pocket Life. But I think I got these at Hobby Lobby a long time ago. I have a Heidi Swapp 6x6 paper pad. I think that's the Color Fresh collection. I have a piece of a Vicky Bouton pattern paper there that I've cut into for some other things. And what I thought I would do is not back the cut file, but I want to cut and trace, or trace and cut, the letters from all these different patterns and colors here. And I think I'm going to do the opposite of what I did on my last layout for Cut to You. I'm going to pop up the cut file and glue the actual letters that I'm cutting right down to the background. Whereas last time I glued the cut file down and then popped up the inner pieces, I'm going to do the opposite, and it gives a totally different effect. So all I'm going to do here is search through all these little pattern papers and scraps and Pocket Life cards and trace each piece or each letter on separate pieces of the paper until I get a rainbow color scheme going here. So this is going to be a hodgepodge of using up some scraps and just bits and pieces that I have in my little scrap bin here on my desk, and that big old stack of stuff over there that I should have put away. So I'm going to see what I've got here. I've got a variety of colors, and I'm going to put everything back kind of like a puzzle and see how it looks. And I really like that. And we're going to go from there. I'm going to work on my background, and I'm going to use white, thick, smooth cardstock here. This is the Basil Marshmallow cardstock. That's my favorite mixed media cardstock to use because it's really thick. The gesso that I'm using here goes on really well and very smoothly, and it takes sprays and watercolors and mists, things like that, really well. So this is clear gesso. I'm just going to coat the whole thing because the idea that I had was I wanted to do mixed media around the edge of the heart. So I'm going to make sure that it's straight since there are words in there. I want this to be dead on in the middle, and then I'm going to lightly trace it with a pencil and just go around the edges so I know exactly where the heart is going to go. And then I'm going to use some Distress Oxides. And don't forget, Gwen has been celebrating her second anniversary all month long through July, and you can get any of her designs in her store for 20% off. If you use the code CELEBRATEMISSY, and I'll link that down below, you can get 20% off of any of her cut files. And if you don't have a die cutting machine, you can still order whatever you want and she will cut it and mail it to you. So that is a great option to have, and I really think that's an awesome deal. Okay, so for my rainbow background, I'm using my Distress Oxide pads, and I'm just very lightly going around the edge of the heart and scraping the ink pad right onto the background. And this looks kind of choppy and messy here. But when you add water to these Distress Oxides, magic occurs, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. If you've never used Distress Oxides, they react really, really well with water, and they have this really pretty, almost like a chalky finish, and they blend really well together. I think that looks kind of cool, actually. I kind of like that, I don't even know what kind of look you would call that. It's not like a brush stroke, but it just looks kind of, I don't know how to describe it. All I know is when you add water to it, it activates and it instantly turns into kind of like a watercolor, and it makes it very easy to blend And just lightly using a brush here to kind of spread the color. And remember, the cut file, the heart part is pretty thin. So when I put the cut file back on top of this rainbow heart, you're going to be able to still see pretty much all of this watercolor. And yeah, I love working with the Distress Oxides. You can stamp with them. You can do exactly what I'm doing here. You can stamp it onto some plastic and then wet it and then flip the plastic over and do it with the packaging. You know, so many options here. So I'm going to bring the cut file back and see how we're going so far, see how it looks. I know where the picture's going to go because that's pretty much taken care of already. It's just a matter of finishing this background. So what I thought I would do is come back in with a couple more layers of a few of the colors. When I originally put the blue down next to the pink and then added the water, those two colors, you know, they ran together and kind of made a purple, which is fine, but I wanted that darker periwinkle blue color to really show because I have some of that color in the letters. So that's another good thing about these Distress Oxides is you can just continue to add layers and your colors are going to get bolder and brighter the more you add. And I really like how this is looking. I think that this is one of those layouts that, you know, the background looks really complicated, but you're watching me make it. It is not hard. It just takes patience and it takes a little bit of time. You know, you have to wait for things to dry if you don't want to, you know, use a heat gun, which I don't use a heat gun on this. I just let it take its time. Now, the more water that I'm adding here, you can kind of see where some of the colors are starting to pool into dips down into the paper where it's warping a little bit. Like you can see there where the orange is and a little bit of the blue. So naturally that's going to happen because paper getting wet is going to warp even with the gesso, but you just have to keep an eye on it, dab some of it up, and you can see there where parts of it dried and the dips of the paper. But I think it's fine. Once you add everything back on top of it, that's not even going to be an issue because I'm going to cover up a lot of the open spots with the letters that I fussy cut and kind of see what I'm talking about here. So the imperfect parts of the mixed media, don't stress about those because the backgrounds are never going to be 100% perfect. So I'll let that dry, and I decided that I wanted to add some more texture. So look at this stencil. I have used this lined stencil for so long. I think this was the very first stencil I bought back in 2008 maybe, and it actually was a part of a 12 by 12, but I only wanted the lined part most of the time, so I just cut it out, and it is so used. I think I've used gold on it, I've used everything on it, and I have not been very good about cleaning it, so a lot of it's got dry paint on it. I really need to take some time and clean it, but it still gets the job done. I'm using modeling paste here and just adding a little bit of texture, and these are very thin lines, and I'm kind of just going around the edges, or not edges, but around the shape of the heart. And this dried really, really cool. It's really rough and bumpy when you touch it, and it's gonna really play a bigger part as we go, I think. And it's subtle, but it's gonna stand out in its own way, if that makes sense. And you'll kind of see what I'm talking about later when I add splatters. You're going to be able to see some of these lines show through. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to pull out matching shimmer sprays to add my splatters. I decided that I didn't want to go with the ink pads again because I would have to dab them all out onto some plastic, water them, and I just thought it would be quicker to do with my shimmers. And I have all of my go-to colors right here on my desk, and I've used these shimmers so many times. I basically have the colors memorized, and I know exactly which color is going to match the Distress Oxides, and so that didn't take me long at all. And you can kind of see now what I was talking about when I add some of these inks, that they kind of bleed into the modeling paste, those thin lines. You can see there on the pink how that did that, and I love that. I wasn't even planning on that, it just happened. And that's the beauty of sometimes you just do things, you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was really going to happen. I didn't even think about it, but I think it turns out really cool, and it just adds to the interest and the texture. And I'm just kind of adding in splatters on each section. Like I added the pink on the pink, the yellow on the yellow, so on and so on. And see, I'm using, the pink is called Vibe Sweetheart, the yellow is Mustard Seed, the blue is Jenny Bee Blue, That color I'm using there is called Mango Tango. The green that I used is called Hermit the Frog. And I also used one called Don't Citron Me. The blue color is called, what did I use? Oh, I think I used Frostbite. I think it's called Frostbite. You can see where the Mango Tango, the orange color, kind of bled into the modeling paste as well. And like I said, I didn't even try to do that. It just happened, and it wound up being, you know, a pleasant surprise because I love the effect of it. It kind of makes the lines stand out, but not so much to where it's just solid lines. It's just kind of random and gives you the effect of texture. I think that turned out really cool. I love that. So we're going to bring everything back, see how we're looking here. I didn't want to cover up a lot of the green, so I really like that you can see the green around and right underneath. See right underneath the photo where that blob of green is? I love how that looks. And I didn't want to cover that up because I just like the shape of the way it dried. So I'm going to make sure that stays visible. So now what I'm going to do is, this took the longest. Very, very slim cuttings of this adhesive foam. I'm going to back the entire cut file. And this took me a while because everything's very, very thin. So I had to cut my foam super, super skinny and take my time to back it all. And I went back and forth of, do I really want to do this? And I decided, yes, I do, because I think the effect is really cool. And it's light gray, so you can't really see it, but all the letters are backed, pretty much all of them. And so now the whole cut file is going to stand up off the page. And I think the effect in the end is worth it. So highly suggest doing this for a cut file if you've never done it, because a lot of the times we back the cut file and then we pop the whole thing up or you glue the whole thing down. But this is just another option for your cut files. So I'm going to go ahead and excuse me, glue that down because I know that's where it's going to go. And then here's what I was talking about in the very beginning. Instead of popping up the letters, I popped up the cut file. So I'm going to glue the letters right down in. I'm going to push them down so they fit right inside each of the letters, and they're going to be flat to the background. So there's going to be a little bit of lift in between the letter and the cut file. All right, through the magic of editing, I got all of the letters in, and I'm going to try to turn it here so you can see the dimension of everything. And it's very slight because that adhesive foam that I was using is not very, you know, it's not huge. And I like it that way. I don't want it to be so popped up off the page where it's too much. So I'm going to start to work on everything else. I'm going to pop the photo up to match the height of everything. So I just stuck a piece of foam there, and I'm going to go ahead and glue the photo down. And I wanted it to kind of be underneath the A and the Z and the Y, so I kind of peeled those up after I glued those down. I didn't think that far ahead because I wanted to have them overlapping a little bit on top of the picture. And then I went through my bag of random things and I found some Vicki Boutin die cuts and a couple of pieces that I'd already cut from a Paige Evans paper. That laughter piece that's orange underneath the picture there, I think that's from her Whimsical collection. This paper is from Webster's Pages, and I just have a couple bags and bins of random things. I don't even know how they get in there, why I put them there, but this paper is from that bag. And I saw these watercolor flowers and thought, those are so pretty. They match the pink section, so let's put them in this layout. I had really no preconceived ideas of what I wanted to use to embellish, because I didn't want to embellish a lot, because I love how this layout looks as is, but I did want to add some things. So I'm going for these small flowers and leaves for the time being. And they blend in. So what I'm trying to do in the beginning here is embellish tone on tone in a loose way, which means I'm going to try to put some pink things on the pink section, some, you know, blue things on the blue section, and it kind of does that, but I kind of also break it up a little bit. So it's not a 100% tone on tone layout like I've done in the past. So as you can see here, I'm already breaking that rule, and I'm putting some pink flowers over on the green and blue side. I'm going to move that orange laughter piece down right there under life. I thought that was a good spot to create a little cluster. There's another little Vicky Bouton die cut underneath it, and it looks white, and around the edges is that blue color. I have a couple of these label circles, the green match, so I'm going to try to find a spot for that green piece that says noted. And I've got another flower down at the bottom there, so I've got pink kind of scattered in 3 different areas. And then I tried this. I was trying to figure out what could I do different for the hearts. And I thought, what if I filled them all up with thread? It would give a nice pop of bright color. It would be a lot of texture and something different that I have never done. And I liked the idea of it, but in reality it did not work because I couldn't get all the thread tucked in there. I covered this heart with glue and then tried to wedge the thread in there, and all it did was stick to my fingers, and it kept coming out. I couldn't get it tucked in there, and it just was not working. I think in theory it would look cool, but getting it to that point, I tried to use my little tool there to tuck it in, and it was just sticking to my fingers. So I wind up taking that out and doing something different, but because there was just thread sticking out everywhere, and it was, yeah, didn't work. That's another little Vicky Bouton piece that says True Story. I'm going to tuck that in, and that's a blue on blue section. So I leave that there, and I've got that little green half circle up at the top in the green section. But then this orange piece, it's not in the orange section. So you can kind of see I'm loosely doing tone on tone, but not 100%. So we're going to come back in with thread. I do want to add thread in a couple spots, so I thought I would go with the pink on pink thing again and add in some pink thread. My only problem here was I had glued everything down, and it was definitely dry, and I could not pry that section up for nothing. So I just tried to get the thread in there as best I could, and then glued it down with the flowers and the leaves there on that section. And I had to work with it a little bit, but eventually I got it to look how I wanted it to look. And I like how it gives that little corner there a little messy, textured look. So I thought I would do the same thing down at the bottom little corner there with the blue thread. And so I'm going to do the same thing there. And I like how that little cluster turned out. And my fingers are still sticky from glue, so everything is still sticking to me. But yeah, I like that I used a couple of different color things down there at the bottom. And sometimes it's just fun to go through your random stuff, and you never know what you're going to find. It's definitely easier to create a layout using one entire collection because you have everything there, everything matches, and it is a challenge to just dig through your stash and find random things because, you know, if you're like me, I could, you know, I could store things a lot better than I do. And I keep finding things that I forgot that I had because it just got stuck in a bag and stuck on a shelf. And then I'm thinking, oh, I forgot I had this. And I really should organize better because I forget I have things. And then I pull out this bag of random stuff and try to make it work. And in this case, it did. But yeah, I've got to get a better organization system going. So I will know what I have, know what goes together, and I will use it more. I layered another circle die cut behind the green that's an orange color, and then I have this die cut here. It's the blue color, and I'm not going to use it as is probably, so I just cut it in half, and I'm going to use the blue edges as layers on the top of the picture and then on the right. And I like the little bit of separation that creates between the background and the picture. Just a slight border around the picture really helps it stand out, I think. So this is what we've got so far. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with those open hearts. And I finally, look at here, I found another stamp set. It's a Heidi Swapp stamp set. I think I got this in a hip kit at some point, and I think part of the bag I was rummaging through was some hip kit goodies, and I found this stamp set, and it has this cute little striped heart, and I thought, okay, since I've got a black and white photo, I'll add a little couple of pops of black and white things. And so I stamped this heart a few times on some white cardstock, and I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to use that for the centers of these hearts. And I like how that looks because you can still see the background kind of in between the little heart and the cut file piece, but it gives something to the middle of the hearts, and it kind of pulls in some of the black and white from the picture, because I couldn't decide what to do for the hearts. I didn't want to leave them open. I didn't want to do more solid papers like the letters because they would blend in. I wanted them to be something different. I actually went through my washi tape and thought about doing gold glitter washi tape, but then I don't know, I wasn't feeling it. So I thought that this was a good way to add interest to the hearts while not making them stand out a lot more than the title. I hope that makes sense. I'm popping them up though because I do want them to stand up a little bit more. So even though the letters are flat on the background, the hearts are popped up. And I did add a couple hearts around the page and a couple other spots. So I go back to that stamp set, and it has a couple of really tiny phrases on it. So I thought that I would add those up to the top part above the photo. There's a little open area there in the green section. So I stamped 2 of those, and I was very nervous about doing that because, you know, sometimes when you stamp it just turns into a blobby mess, but I actually did a decent job and I was impressed. I can still read what the words say. So these are some stickers from Maggie Holmes, and they're clear stickers. They're awesome. They look like stamps when you stick them onto some paper. So there's some really tiny pieces, and I thought that they would make good little accents kind of around the open spots of the letters of the cut file. And I'm going to add in a couple of those. And I love clear stickers, especially when they're black like this, because like I said, they look like stamps. These make great titles. They make great embellishments. You could stick these onto some white cardstock and then cut them out and use them as die cuts. So yeah, this one says love you. I'm gonna add that to the top there. And this just adds more little pops of black around the layout. And I'm glad I decided to do that because at first I wasn't gonna add any more black to the page. And I'm glad I did because I feel like it just adds a little something extra. I actually wound up moving that sticker that I just stuck down there at the bottom. We're almost done. I'm going to add in my journaling lines. I'm going to use my black fine tip Sharpie to write my journaling. And I just decided to do this to the bottom part of the heart there since that was an open area. And then I cut some hearts from this paper. I think that's another Webster's Pages. It might be Kaisercraft. I'm not sure. But they were black and white hearts. I cut those out. I'm going to glue those in a couple spots. And you can see where I moved that little clear sticker up on the blue section there. But yeah, I love how that looked. Last thing I'm going to do is add some black splatters with my Shimmers Night Moves. And we're going to call it a day. That's the final layout. I love how this turned out. You can see the dimension there with the cut file being raised up. I think it gives a really cool effect. And now you can see how the background, all those little spots that pooled, doesn't even matter. It just sort of works. Everything blends in. And I took a lot of close-ups here. You can see all the detail, all the textures and dimension. Don't forget, you can get 20% off of all of Gwen's cut files. And she has some really amazing, awesome, fun cut files. So check out her store. I'm going to link it below. Celebrate Missy is the code to get you 20% off of anything. And yeah, keep checking her blog. Make sure you check out all of the different designers that are joining her, as well as her design team this month, for lots of inspiration and fun, scrappy projects. And I just want to thank her for inviting me to help her celebrate. She is awesome. I love her work and her cut files, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. So I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you in my next video.